In my family, my silence was always mistaken for weakness. I'm Harper Lane, 27 years old, the forgotten middle child in a family of 3 siblings from Austin, Texas. My older brother Mason is our parents' pride, a former football star, once celebrated by the whole town. My younger sister, Lila, is the social media angel with a perfect smile and thousands of followers. And me? I'm just Harper, the quiet girl who loves computers, numbers, and solitude. Since childhood, I've been used to being interrupted at dinner, compared to others, and labeled as boring. They said I didn't have what it takes to succeed, that I lacked sparkle. But what they never realized was their constant underestimation planted a fire inside me, a hunger to make them see me. Just once, but in a way they would never forget. Sometimes, the first betrayal you experience doesn't come from outsiders. It comes from your own family. Oh, I still remember that summer when I was 15 the summer. My very first dream was taken away by the people who were supposed to protect me the most. Back then, I was in 10th grade. While Mason was busy competing, and Mom took Lila to photo shoots for the Miss Teen Texas pageant, I worked part-time at a small coffee shop near school. Every morning I got up at 5 a.m. and biked across 3 streets to catch my first shift. The smell of roasted coffee mixed with the sound of old jazz records, that was the only time of day I truly felt alive. I saved every tip, every crumpled $10 bill folded carefully inside my notebook. My goal was simple: to buy a used laptop so I could learn programming. I was fascinated by lines of code and dreamed of one day creating something that could live through my own intelligence. After 3 months of working, I'd saved $500, the biggest amount I'd ever had. I remember coming home that evening, heart racing, with excitement, hiding the money inside a shoebox under my bed. I didn't tell anyone, I just wanted to bring it to the computer store the next morning to make a deposit. But life never lets small dreams stay untouched for long. The next morning, I heard Mom calling from downstairs. "Harper, come down here for a minute." When I got there, Mom, Dad, and Lila were sitting in the living room. Lila was holding her laptop, looking thrilled. In front of them was my shoebox wide open. My crumpled bills were scattered across the table like evidence of a crime. "I found this while cleaning your room," Mom said, her voice calm, almost casual. "Were you planning to use it for something?" "Yes," I said quickly, confused. "That's the money I earned to buy a laptop. I want to learn programming." Dad laughed, a dry, dismissive sound that echoed through the room. "Programming? You don't need a laptop for that nonsense. You're just wasting your time. Lila needs a new camera for the state pageant. That's a real opportunity, you understand?" I froze. Then Mom added gently, "We'll use this money for Lila. You can always save again later, right? Your sister needs support right now." I turned to Lila. She lowered her eyes, trying to hide the smile tugging at her lip. "You'll understand," she said softly. "It's for the family." "For the family?" The phrase echoed in my head like a cruel joke. I wanted to scream, to grab every dollar I'd worked so hard for, but my voice was trapped inside my throat. And in that moment, I understood one thing clearly. In this family, my voice didn't matter. That night, I lay still on my bed, staring at the dark ceiling. I cried, not the loud kind, but slow, heavy tears. I wasn't angry about losing the money. I was angry that my dream was worth less than my sister's glittering dress. My parents always said, "Family comes first," quote, but they never meant me. I was the shadow between 2 shining stars, Mason, the hero, and Lila, the darling. I was the background they could forget. Weeks later, I saw Lila on stage, her dress sparkling, holding the new camera I'd unknowingly paid for. Mom filmed proudly, Dad clapped. I stood far back, holding a copy of the event flyer, my heart hollow. When the music started, one thought crossed my mind. I helped buy that camera. But right there, under the stage lights and cheers, I made a promise to myself. I would change. Not to earn their love, but to prove my worth, even if they never acknowledged it. I started reading about finance, programming, entrepreneurship. I borrowed an old laptop from the library and taught myself code line by line. When you have nothing to lose, you learn fast. I stayed up late, worked more shifts, and studied harder. While Mason was in the news, and Lila posted about her PR gifts, I was quietly building the foundation of my own future. At 16, one of my teachers nominated me for a statewide student app competition. I submitted a small project, a personal budgeting app, and won an honorable mention. The prize was only $150, but to me, it was proof that I could create something of value, even when no one believed I could. When I brought the certificate home, Mom barely glanced at it. "Oh, that's nice," she said. "But could you help Lila edit her new video? You're good with computers." I smiled and nodded. But deep down, a voice whispered, "That's okay. Let them underestimate you. You'll prove yourself another way." Years later, when I looked back, I realized that morning, when my parents took my savings, was the moment they unknowingly gave me a gift, the fire to stand on my own. Not everyone is lucky enough to have a loving family. Some of us have to learn strength in silence. And sometimes, that silence becomes the beginning of a roar no one ever expected. I don't know how far I'll go, but I do know one thing. Next time someone tries to take my dream away, they won't be able to, because now I've learned how to protect it myself. When no one believes in you, let success be your only answer. After that summer, I was no longer the naive 15-year-old girl who thought family love was unconditional. I started living as if no one had my back because, in truth, no one ever did. I spent every hour studying and working. While my classmates went to movies or on weekend trips, I stayed in the library, borrowing every book I could find on programming, finance, and project management. When my parents asked why I didn't go out like normal kids, I simply said, "I'm busy. I'm learning how to get out of here." They laughed, thinking I was joking. But I had never been more serious in my life. By the time I graduated high school, I earned a full scholarship in data science at the University of Texas. My parents barely reacted. "As long as you don't need a loan, that's fine," Dad said. Mason's training for his next game, and Lila's focusing on her social media career. Just one careless comment, yet it etched deeper into me the truth that I was the extra piece in my own family. Moving into the dorm was the first time I truly felt free. No one told me to stop dreaming. No one laughed when I talked about algorithms. I started taking small freelance coding jobs online, fixing apps, writing simple accounting software for local businesses. It wasn't much money, but it was the first soil where I could plant my own seeds. One late night in my sophomore year, my roommate complained about not knowing where all her spending went. That's when the idea struck. Create an app that tracks expenses automatically and gives savings advice. It was simple, but it lit a fire in me. I called it Clear Budget, a small tool with a big dream, helping young people control their money before money controls them. I worked day and night. There were weeks when I slept on the library couch, head resting on my backpack, just to finish the prototype. I taught myself coding, interface design, and marketing, all from free YouTube tutorials. No mentors, no investors, no applause, just me, my determination, and silence. By my junior year, I released the first version of Clear Budget on a small forum. Within 24 hours, it had 500 downloads. A week later, 5,000. I still remember the morning I saw the numbers on my phone. My heart felt like it was about to burst. Emails began pouring in. "Thank you, your app helped me save enough for rent. You saved me from drowning in credit card debt." I read every word with tears streaming down my face. Not because of the money, but because, for the first time, I was seen. But early success always comes with challenges. To expand, I needed funding. I applied for 3 student startup grants and got rejected all 3 times. They said my idea was not commercially scalable, lacking growth potential. For a moment, I almost gave up. Then I remembered that morning when my parents took away my savings. That powerless feeling came rushing back, and I swore I would never feel it again. So I did the only thing I knew how to do: work harder than anyone else. Weekends became workdays. I fixed bugs, improved systems, cold-called users, and offered free trials. Gradually, ClearBudget reached over 50,000 active users, and a small investment fund in Dallas noticed. They offered $1.2 million in seed funding. I was 23 when I signed the deal. I still remember walking into my tiny rented office in downtown Austin, 3 desks, 2 employees, and a whiteboard that read, "Make finance simple. Make life easier." It was the same line I wrote as a student, now the official company slogan. Every email, every meeting, every failure taught me something new. and each time I stumbled, I whispered to myself, if my parents never taught me how to rise, I'll teach myself. 3 years later, Clear Budget had over 2 million users and was valued at $5.3 million. Newspapers started writing about me, Harper Lane, the young woman who turned a finance app into a fortune. Friends called, professors congratulated me, and my parents? They still thought I was doing something techie on my computer. One weekend, I went home to visit. During dinner, Dad asked casually, are you still working at that little company? Lila's shooting with a big brand, soon you should learn from her. Tech people are so dry. I just smiled. No arguments. No explanations. Because I knew the real storm hadn't hit yet. That night, I went up to my old room, the same one where my savings had once been taken. Everything looked the same. Only I had changed. I opened my laptop, watching the live revenue chart rise by the minute. I thought of that 15-year-old girl biking under the sun, saving for her dream computer, and I smiled. They never believed in me. But that's okay, because once you stop needing validation, you finally become free. In the quiet of that room, I whispered to myself, numbers don't lie, and neither does success. From the girl they once overlooked, I became living proof that silence can be the foundation of the loudest explosion. And I know, sooner or later my family will hear that explosion, whether they want to or not. They say family dinners bring people together, but for me, it's where old wounds get reopened again and again. I came home on a warm Saturday evening at the start of summer. The house looked the same, the white-painted porch, the bougainvillea vines in the yard, and the faint scent of rose perfume that always lingered in my mother's living room. Everything was familiar, yet distant, maybe because I was no longer the weak Harper they used to know. I came back to visit Mason. He'd been injured and had to take a break from football. Lila, on the other hand, had just signed a brand deal with a major beauty company. My parents were thrilled and organized a family celebration dinner. I knew the real reason I was invited to complete the picture of a perfect family. Still, I went partly out of courtesy, partly out of curiosity. I wanted to see if anything had really changed. The moment I walked in, Mom exclaimed, "Oh, Harper, you're here. Come see your sister. Isn't she stunning?" Lila turned, her golden hair glowing under the lights, her red dress hugging her flawless figure. She flipped her hair and smiled brightly. "See, Harper? Hard work does pay off. The brand only picked 3 people in all of Texas." I smiled and said, "Congratulations, Lila. You deserve it." She raised a brow, smirking. "Wow, our dear Harper actually knows how to compliment someone. I thought you only talked about money and computers." Mason laughed. Dad joined in. Mom pretended to scold her. "Lila, don't say that." But the pride in her eyes betrayed her words. I stayed quiet. I sat down and watched them talk and laugh, as if I were just a guest at their table. When dessert was served, Mom suddenly put down her spoon. "Oh, Harper, there's something I wanted to discuss. Starting next week, Lila will need space to film her videos. Your old room upstairs has the best lighting, and you're hardly ever here." I looked up. "What do you mean?" Dad cut in, firm as ever. "She means you should let your sister use your room. You can move into the storage room or the garage. It's the most reasonable option." The table fell silent. I could hear the faint clink of silverware. My heartbeat slowed. "I don't understand," I said calmly. "Why should I move? That room belongs to me." Lila scoffed, resting her chin on her hand. "Oh, come on. You still live there? I thought you'd moved out for good. You can work anywhere, can't you? You don't need that room." I set my glass down. The sound was sharp. "You're right, Lila. I don't need that room. But it's funny the way Mom and Dad talk. It's like it was never mine to begin with." Dad slammed his hand on the table. "Don't you dare talk back, Harper. This is my house. I make the rules. If you can't respect that, you can leave right now." The air grew heavy. Mason cleared his throat, trying to ease the tension. "Come on, it's just a room. Let's not make a big deal out of it." I looked around the table. They were all used to my silence, my compliance. But this time, I smiled a slow, steady smile that made even my mother hesitate. "All right," I said quietly. "If that's what you all want, I'll move out. But this time, I won't be coming back." Lila burst out laughing. "You sound so dramatic. Fine, go ahead. And don't forget to check out my next video. I stood, adjusted my jacket, and said softly, "Don't worry, Lila. The next time you see where I live, you won't be laughing." No one understood what I meant, and I didn't need them to. I said goodbye and walked out. The door clicked shut behind me gently. But for me, it was the sound of closing a chapter. That night, I sat in my car, staring at the house I grew up in, its windows glowing warmly. Through the upstairs window, I saw Lila dancing around with her camera, Mom smiling behind her, Dad watching TV as usual. I took a deep breath, pulled out my phone, and opened my company's banking app. The balance displayed a long string of digits, each one earned through sleepless nights and quiet resilience. I tapped New Transaction and found the contact of a real estate agent I'd spoken to before. "Hi, this is Harper Lane. I've decided to buy the house across the street. Full cash payment." The agent was surprised, but agreed quickly. I hung up, leaned back in my seat, and exhaled. It wasn't victory, I felt it was peace. Because for the first time, I didn't need anyone's permission to belong somewhere. As I drove away from that street, I didn't look back. Dad's words echoed in my head. "If you can't follow my rules, then leave." I smiled. "I did, Dad, but one day, I'll come back in a way you could never imagine." That night, I realized something. Sometimes, to earn respect, you have to leave, not to escape, but to build a life so strong they have no choice but to look up to you. And from that moment on, I began preparing for that day, the day my silence would echo louder than every word ever spoken in that house. I can help you translate this part into simple, natural American English, the kind even a middle school student could understand, while keeping the emotions strong and the tone cinematic. Here's the full translation. I don't remember the exact moment I stopped being afraid. Maybe it was when I signed the final contract, the one that made me the biggest shareholder of Lanebridge. The fintech company my brother Mason used to brag was his life's dream. But one thing's for sure, from that day on, I knew. The game had changed. That Friday morning, I sent a message to our family group chat. "Tonight, I'd like to invite everyone to dinner at a special place. Let's call it a little celebration." No one suspected anything. Mom replied with a heart emoji. Mason asked if it was a fancy restaurant. Lila just sent a shrugging sticker. I smiled. They didn't know this dinner would be the first time I held my head high, and the last time I'd see that look of pity in their eyes. The restaurant was on the 18th floor of a new high-rise in downtown Austin, one of the projects I had secretly invested in when it first began. Warm lights glowed on crystal glasses. Soft jazz filled the room. I booked a table by the window where the whole city sparkled below. Mom gasped as she walked in. "Harper, you got a table here? This place costs a fortune." I smiled. "I have some connections here, Mom." What I didn't tell her was that I was one of the investors behind this restaurant chain. As dinner went on, the mood was easy. Mason talked about his training and small sponsorships. Lila bragged about her new makeup deal. Mom kept praising her. And Dad just sat quietly, watching me, as if waiting for me to say something worth hearing. Finally, he asked, "So Harper's still doing computer stuff?" I looked up calmly. "Yes, Dad. Still in finance. But I don't work for anyone anymore." Mom laughed awkwardly. "What do you mean? You quit again?" I set my glass down. "No, Mom. I started my own company, Veritas Capital. We just closed a $15 million funding round. And I also bought 42% of Lanebridge Mason's company." The table went silent. I could hear the soft clink of silverware, the jazz fading into nothing. Mason froze, staring at me. "What? Harper, you're joking, right?" I met his eyes. "No, Mason, you work for me now." Mom's hand trembled. Dad's jaw tightened. Lila looked around like she expected to see hidden cameras. "But how?" Mom stammered. "How long have you been hiding this?" I smiled softly, not bitter anymore, just free. "Since I realized that strangers saw my worth, while my own family never did." Mason slammed his hand on the table. "So this is payback? You just wanted to embarrass us?" I shook my head. "No, I don't need revenge. I just wanted respect, something I never got in 27 years. No one spoke after that. When they left, I signed the bill and made sure they saw my name under owner, Veritas Dining Group. I didn't need to say anything more. The truth spoke for itself. 3 days later, Mason emailed me. Congrats, Harper. I never thought you'd get this far. I guess you're not the sister I used to know. He was right. I wasn't. I wasn't the quiet Harper who always backed down. I was the one running the board now. Mom and Dad never called. But I heard from a neighbor that Dad started telling people, my middle daughter's in finance doing pretty well, actually. I smiled when I heard that. I guess they needed to lose me to be proud of me. That night, I stood on my balcony. In my new apartment, inside the very building I partly owned, Austin glittered below, cars streaming like rivers of light. I closed my eyes and breathed in. No applause. No congratulations. But for the first time in my life, I felt whole. Sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't destroying them. It's living so well that they realize they were wrong about you all along. Everything started just a few months after the night I revealed the truth. My family, the same people who used to call themselves the perfect picture of success and unity, began to fall apart piece by piece, like a wall that had gone too long without repair. And this time, I just watched. Lila was the first to fall. The social media angel began live streaming less and less, then disappeared completely. I heard she got sued by a beauty brand for breaking her contract. Turns out, Lila had bought fake followers and faked her sales numbers, costing the company tens of thousands of dollars. When the story leaked, the internet tore her apart. Every brand that once lined up to work with her turned its back. One afternoon, I ran into her at a cafe. She looked exhausted, messy hair, red eyes, no sparkle left. She looked at me and whispered, "Can you help me? I just need some money. I'll pay you back." I was silent for a moment. Then I remembered being 17, the quiet girl everyone laughed at for not being interesting enough. And the loudest laugh back then was Lila's. So I just said softly, "Lila, sometimes losing everything is the only way to start over." Then I walked away. It didn't look back. My parents tried to save her reputation. They sold the old house, the same one where I'd been called the invisible one, to pay Lila's debts. Dad retired early. Mom took a part-time job at a small shop. I heard about it from someone else, but I didn't step in. I thought I'd feel satisfied, but strangely I didn't. Instead, there was an emptiness, like watching a bright light fade away, even if you no longer needed its glow. Then came Mason. The brother who once called me a computer nerd finally faced failure himself. After I became the main shareholder at Lanebridge, the company restructured. Mason, who had no real skills beyond his old sports fame, was moved to the sales department. I remember his voice on the phone, bitter and shaking. "Are you happy now, Harper? Seeing me like this, does it make you proud?" I answered calmly, "No, I just think maybe now you finally know what it means to stand on your own 2 feet." There was silence on the line. Then the call ended. A few months later, Mason left the company and the city. My parents couldn't accept that the middle child was now the only one standing strong. During one short conversation, Mom said through tears, "Harper, can't you help us a little? You have so much money." I looked at her for a long time. The words "help us" sounded strange because for years, that "us" never included me. So I said quietly, "Mom, I once needed a hug, some encouragement. Back then, no one helped me. Now, I think everyone has to learn how to get back up on their own." And she cried. But I didn't stay. I walked away the same way you close a book you've read too many times. Out of everyone, there was only one person I kept in touch with: Ronald, my cousin. He was the only one who never laughed when I failed. He came to see me one day, saying he wanted to study again and build a real career. I helped him find a scholarship and a few job openings. He asked me, "Don't you hate them, Harper, after everything they did?" I smiled. Of course I was angry, but staying angry keeps you stuck in the same place. A year later, I received an invitation to his cafe's grand opening. He said, "Thanks to you, I believe family can still be kind." I sat in his little shop, sipping cappuccino, and for the first time in years, I felt real peace. Not because someone apologized, but because I no longer needed them to. My family fell apart, but he didn't. I still run my company, and I've started programs to help young women study fintech. Whenever I see their confident smiles, I remember that one 7-year-old girl, the one people thought wasn't good enough. Now, I finally understand. Forgiveness isn't about whether they deserve it. It's about freeing yourself. And sometimes, the best revenge against a biased family isn't to make them suffer, but to live so brightly that they can never forget they once looked down on you. A year after I left my old house, Austin welcomed its first autumn after years of drought. The golden trees along Lamar Boulevard shimmered like ribbons of light, wrapping around a city reborn with energy. Standing in the glass room on the 25th floor, I looked down at the moving traffic and suddenly realized this was the first time I truly felt free. My apartment isn't the biggest or the most luxurious, but every detail here is mine. The walnut desk, the abstract painting I bought from a young artist, the soft armchair where I read at night, each one is a small symbol of something I never had before: the right to decide my own life. In the mornings, I work with a small but talented team. Veritas Capital has opened 2 new branches, one in Dallas, one in Seattle. We don't just invest. We've also created a scholarship fund for young women who dream of studying finance, girls who were once ignored, underestimated, just like I was. When I see their smiles as they receive their scholarships, I realize sometimes the best way to heal your past is to help others avoid the same pain. In the afternoons, I walk through the neighborhood. Ronald's little cafe sits on a street corner, glass windows gleaming, a simple sign above the door: Root and Rise. I've always loved that name. Ronald's face lights up when he sees me. Harper, I added a new drink, the Veritas Latte. Customers love it. I laugh. He pours me a cup, and the warm, rich aroma fills the air. Soft music plays in the background as we talk about work, about the projects ahead. He's changed, calmer now, more thoughtful, grateful. After a pause, he looks out the window and asks, "Do you ever feel lonely? Up there, in your world?" I think for a moment, then smile. Of course I do. But it's a peaceful kind of loneliness, the kind you choose. No one can take it from you. We sit quietly for a while. The sunlight streams through the window, glinting off the coffee cup like liquid gold. And I suddenly understand growing up isn't about winning over others. It's about staying calm when you meet them again, in memory or in life. That night back home, I opened an old notebook. Between the yellowed pages, I found the only family photo I still kept. In it, I stood behind Mason and Lila, a shy, awkward smile, eyes searching for a place to belong. I smiled again, but this time without bitterness. I folded the photo and tucked it into a drawer, closing a chapter that no longer needed to stay open. I no longer need my parents' approval. I don't need late apologies or empty praise. I've proven my worth not to be loved, but to be free. That night, I sat on the balcony. The autumn wind was cool against my skin. Below me, the city glowed, every window a different story. And I wondered, how many people out there are still trying to prove themselves to someone who never really saw them? I whispered softly, "It's okay. One day, you'll rewrite the way they see you." Life, I've learned, is like a long game of chess. Some moves make you think you're losing, but really they're setting up your final quiet comeback. I was once the invisible one, the one dismissed and ignored, the one who thought her value depended on someone else's opinion. But now I know, real strength isn't about making others regret their choices. It's about living in a way that makes you never need that regret. 1 year passed, then 2, then 3. I heard my parents move to the suburbs and started a simple life. Mason began coaching kids' sports. Lila returned to social media this time, talking about mental health instead of showing off. I'm not a part of any of their stories anymore, and that, somehow, brings peace. Because in the end, everyone is learning how to grow, in their own way. My story ends here, not with a dramatic victory, but with the calm that comes after the storm. I gave them back what they once gave me: silence. But this silence is different, not born of fear, but of freedom. And if anyone asks whether I'm still angry, I'll say, no, I'm grateful. Because if they hadn't looked down on me, I might never have become who I am today. Thank you for listening. And let me ask you this. If you were Harper, if your family once rejected and belittled you, would you go back to help them when they fell apart? And what do you think is the truest form of revenge, making them regret it, or living happier than they ever could?